What's going on, guys? I am Kadarius Washington, and y'all are checking out the Sports Rundown. So we are already at week 3 in the NFL season, if you can believe it. And to say that a lot has happened throughout the last 2 weeks of the NFL season have been quite a pretty big understatement. We've been having a lot of injury news, a lot of fallout from a whole bunch of the stuff that's been going on. And two of the top teams in the AFC, they're kind of going through it right now. Those being the Cincinnati Bengals and the Kansas City Chiefs. So starting with the Chiefs are right now 0-2 for the first time under the Patrick Mahomes era. And there are some people saying that this Chiefs team is not necessarily the same Chiefs, and to an extent you can kind of understand why. The Chiefs can't run the ball. Travis Kelce is not the Travis Kelce of old, and everyone knows that. Rashee Rice ain't coming through those doors until week 7. And you got Xavier Worthy, who's dealing with a bum shoulder. From reports, he's gonna try to give it a go on Sunday night, but you got the injury to worry about, and the defense, to me, has just not been all that impressive throughout these last 2 games. And there's people also saying that the Chiefs aren't going to win the division and that they're not going to make the playoffs and the sky is falling and this and that. But honestly, I'm not too worried about Kansas City just yet. I mean, like I said a couple of weeks ago when I made my season predictions, as long as Patrick Mahomes is on the field, I'm not counting the Chiefs all the way out. And I especially want to see how this team looks when they're at full strength, and obviously that's not going to be until later on in the season. But ever since this wide receiver core was assembled with Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Hollywood Brown, they have not shared the field since they were assembled. And so, and don't get me wrong, the AFC West, it's a tough division this year. I mean, you can't sleep on the Broncos, and the LA Chargers look like the real darn deal. But I just want to wait until we see the Chiefs at full strength. But I will say this. If the Chiefs want to get their season going, it's got to start on Sunday night against the Giants. It's a good opponent for the Chiefs. The Giants' defense right now has not been as good as I originally thought they were going to be. We don't really know which version of Russell Wilson we're going to get. I mean, apparently last week he might have heard the conversations about last week being his last week starting and bringing in Jackson Dart because he looked like the Seattle version of Russell Wilson, who was on a fast track to the Hall of Fame. So I don't know necessarily if we're going to get the Seattle Russ, who was on track to be into the Hall of Fame. We're going to get the Denver Russ, who stunk up the joint for most of his time there, mostly in the first season anyway. Or the Pittsburgh Russ that was a combination of both. Because Kansas City's next 3 games, look at their next 3 games. They got Baltimore, Jacksonville on a Monday night, and Detroit on a Sunday night. So if the Chiefs want to get things going and they want to start ripping off some wins, it's got to start on Sunday night against the New York Giants. But I'll tell you a team who's kind of going through a little bit worse, and that's the Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Burrow. So Joe Burrow, I believe tomorrow, is going to have surgery on that turf toe that he suffered on Sunday against Jacksonville. And so we're not going to see Joe Burrow again until December, if we even see him at all for the rest of the year. And I'll tell you, Joe Burrow, he's been suffering a lot of injuries in his career. He missed 7 games in 2023 after tearing a ligament in his throwing wrist. He dealt with a calf strain throughout training camp and the preseason throughout that 2023 season. He had a torn ACL, MCL, PCL, and meniscus that ended his rookie season, as well as a pinky dislocation. And for the looks of things, it's looking like the Bengals are going to go with Jake Browning as the starter, and you can kind of understand why. Jake Browning obviously knows the system. He's been in Cincinnati since 2022, and he's had the starting experience in the previous years that Burrow went down. So in those 7 games in 2023, Cincinnati went 4-3. Browning had a 70% completion percentage. He threw for 12 touchdowns. But here's the bugaboo that worries me about Browning. He threw for 7 interceptions in those 7 games. And even though he had 2 touchdowns on Sunday, including the game winner, he threw 3 more interceptions in that game, bringing I believe his career total up to 10, if I'm not mistaken. And look, I don't really dip into the advanced stats as often as I probably should, but this is something that I saw on CBS Sports. They had an article out there, but take a look at this chart right here. So since 2023, Joe Burrow has a negative play rate of 10%. Jake Browning is at 12.9%. Joe Burrow has an interception rate of 1.4%. Jake Browning has a 4% rate. Burrow has a 6.8% sack rate. Browning is at 8.6. Burrow has a 19.7% sack per pressure rate, while Browning has 23%. And the next 5 games for Minnesota, they're pretty brutal. They're at Minnesota against that Brian Flores defense. They're at Denver on a Monday night, Detroit at Green Bay, and then again at Pittsburgh at home on a Thursday night. But Cincinnati, they added a little bit of reinforcement, if you even want to call it that. They added Mike White, who had those 2 good games when he was with the Jets and has done nothing since then. And Sean Clifford, the former backup in Green Bay, who's only thrown 1 pass in his NFL career. I'm not even exaggerating. He only threw 1 pass in his career, and that was a 37-yarder to Bo Melton. So the Bengals, now listen, I want to believe in Jake Browning. I want to believe that Cincinnati is going to stay afloat, but I'll say this. If Cincinnati can rip off maybe 2 or 3 of those 5 wins that I just mentioned, then maybe I'll like Cincinnati's chances a little more. But like I said in my predictions a couple of weeks ago, the way that Cincinnati can make a deep run in the playoffs and eventually the Super Bowl is if Joe Burrow is healthy. And listen, Cincinnati, like we know, they have a really good offense. Their defense is not as horrible as we originally thought they were going to be. But Jake Browning, he's definitely got to clean up the turnovers, and he's got to right the ship because there's a lot of pressure on Cincinnati this year. And on the Joe Burrow side of things, I know I heard a little bit of talk about it, but I'm really hoping that he doesn't wake up one morning like Barry Sanders or Calvin Johnson or Andrew Luck and just says, you know what, I'm done. I had a whole bunch of injuries. They've never invested in my O-line. I'm just done. And then the Bengals, who really, even though they've been historically a poverty franchise, who have actually been relevant throughout these last few years, if that were to happen, and I'm really hoping that it doesn't, the Bengals, they're definitely going to be in some trouble for sure then. And also, like I just said, Week 3 kicks off tonight. We got the Buffalo Bills taking on the Miami Dolphins. And, folks, Miami's going to get their behinds kicked. Listen, this team, the impression of the Dolphins just gives dead team walking. And Mike McDaniel, as we know, his seat could not get any hotter. And I know people are saying maybe around Week 5, Week 6, if the Dolphins are like 1-4 or 0-5, he's probably gone. I'll say this. If the Dolphins lose bad enough, if this thing is like, I don't know, 63-14, McDaniel's probably gone tomorrow morning because this team, I mean, they have no life. They have no life. It's like they're going into these games knowing that they don't have a shot. And it's against the Bills, who, I mean, their defense is missing a couple of key pieces in Matt Milano and Ed Oliver. But Miami, I mean, where's the energy? At least have a little bit of optimism. But Miami, they're going to get their behinds kicked. And if they lose bad enough, I wouldn't be surprised if Mike McDaniel is probably gone first thing tomorrow morning. But that's just me. Like, comment, subscribe, click that notification bell to be notified of when I post again. And also follow me on Twitter and on Bluesky at CW Talk Sports. That's CWTALKS Sports. And I will see y'all the next time. Peace.